I am talking right now with Sarah Ferrari, and she is a engineer, she is a scientist, and she is an expert on Legionella. Dr. Edwards had to go, and we're going to continue our discussion with Sarah Ferrari. Sarah, now, you talked a little bit about state laws, and apparently there are no laws on the books in the states that concerning the responsibility of business owners. And I look at, I don't know if you're aware, you've been keeping up on the Hopkins outbreak. I'm sure you have.
I'm aware of it, yes.
Yeah, and the Minnesota Department of Health just yesterday put out a report saying they believe they have the source of the Legionnaires, and it's cooling towers at a beverage manufacturing plant. And the only reason they found out about the cooling towers, it was from a tip from the public. Are cooling towers secretive? How does that work?
Well, I guess, they're kind of pretty much out there on the roof generally because they're rejecting the heat from the building, whether it's a process or whether it's for the air conditioning, rejecting that heat to the atmosphere. So they're generally out on the roof or out potentially at grade. Yeah. But, not so hard to find.
Okay. So now the cooling towers, that appears to be the source of many of these outbreaks.
Well, so that's very misleading.
Oh, tell me.
It is. So less than 2% of all cases of Legionnaires have been associated with water from cooling towers. They do make very good news, and most people don't really know what cooling towers are, so maybe there's some kind of mystery there. But the reality is that the vast majority of Legionnaires' disease is caused by the drinking water, not by drinking water, right. Not by ingesting water, unless it goes down the wrong pipe, in which case if you inhale the water, you could be also inhaling the bacteria. And, of course, there have been cases where patients who don't have access to water, like hospitalized, and they're not drinking water, but they have ice chips. Some of them have contracted Legionnaires' disease from the ice chips. So getting back to the subject, nearly 2/3 of all the drinking water-related outbreaks of any kind are caused by Legionella. And that's something most people don't know, and it doesn't necessarily get a lot of press. The other fun fact that most people don't know is that 96% of all cases are individual cases, not linked to an outbreak. Mm-hmm. So that is the vast majority of cases. And unless they occur maybe in a hospital, most of those are never investigated. Gotcha. So we could do a much better job, I think, on the investigation side when somebody does contract the disease, making sure that we do find the source.
Now, back to the state laws. Apparently, most states don't have laws concerning the responsibility of business owners, municipal governments, hospitals, to keep the cooling towers clean, for example. Mm-hmm. Am I right about that?
That is correct.
And would that be too much of a burden on these companies, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think I would turn it around and say, what is going to be effective? Like, if our goal is preventing Legionnaires' disease, okay, what are the steps we need to take to be effective in that prevention? And so certainly cooling towers should be well maintained. Certainly hot tubs, that's another one that, should be maintained according to, best practices. And these best practices are no secret. There's a lot of great information in guidelines, which are easy to find. One very good one is Guideline 12, which was published by ASHRAE in 2000, and it's very widely read and referenced. And it gives a lot of very good information for facility managers. Now that deals with Legionella. It's assuming it's already come into the building from the municipal supply. Okay. So as a building manager, what are you going to do now that it's in your building, right? And there's certain steps you can take. Making sure the water is flowing, you don't have stagnant zones, making sure the hot water stays hot, cold water stays cold, lukewarm water, is where Legionella like to live. They like body temperature, right? 98, 99 degrees. Setting your water heater at 120 is not going to kill them, and it's going to allow them to flourish downstream when the water is, let's say 100 degrees or so. So there's any number of things that building managers can do. Cooling towers maintenance is just one of them, of course. And then on the other side, I would say that Legionella bacteria is one of the only pathogens that the water suppliers, they just leave it to the building owner, right? So, for example, the Ohio crypto outbreak, clearly linked to the water supply. The EPA is not putting it back on the building owner to say, why didn't you take care of this problem as it entered your building, right? So it's a little bit backwards, the way we're thinking about it. The public water suppliers there's certain things that they can do to improve the quality of the water or maintain the quality of the water throughout the distribution system. That being said, if some bacteria does get into the building, then the facility managers need to be aware of that and take the appropriate steps.
Okay. Now, so I am the owner of Citrus Systems up in Hopkins, Minnesota, and I have a Legionella contaminated cooling tower. What are the appropriate cleaning procedures to resolve this problem?
Well, I guess it depend on the system, right? So for that particular system, I'm just imagining what it looks like. Mm-hmm. So for that, you would want to apply some disinfectant and drain it. And then if there's any physical cleaning that needs to be done, you can take care of that. And then you would flush it with some fresh water and then apply some more disinfectant.
Are you talking about bleach or is it something else?
There's industrial products.
Okay, gotcha.
It would be similar to bleach.
Gotcha.
That can be used. But it's not a one-size-fits-all. So you had asked about regulations, and I'm thinking about the very prescriptive regulations that were put in place in New York. And the problem with being very prescriptive, saying you must do X, Y, Z, and not allowing any latitude, is that not every system is the same. So I'll just give you one example. The cleaning procedure in the document or in the regulation requires draining of the system. Well, there are a number of very large systems which are not allowed to drain. The water in the cooling tower is also the fire suppression water. So, and that would be maybe at a power plant or something like that. But it's just one example of, taking all the freedom away from the facility to decide for themselves how they're going to handle it is not necessarily a good thing. I think it's okay to specify results, but not specify sort of the how-to. Of course, there's guidance. Some people want guidance, and that's perfectly fine, but to set it as a requirement really ties people's hands and creates some unintended consequences.
Gotcha. Now, Legionella, much like many other diseases, do tend to affect Washington, D.C., and this outbreak we got going on in Minnesota had prompted one of the senators up there to call on the CDC to take additional steps to respond to outbreaks of Legionella. In reality, what can Senator so-and-so calls on the CDC, what exactly can they do?
Well, there's a number of different things they can do. Mm-hmm. They can do some research. It's still really not well known exactly how people are infected or what is the infectious dose. It probably varies by person.
Sure.
There's a whole host of things that are still not well understood about the disease. So increasing their budget for research, I guess, would be one thing. The CDC could also use their expertise and sort of clout, I guess, to call on the EPA to do certain things like require the drinking water to be held at a certain quality, or ask them to include Legionella on the unregulated contaminant list. The other thing they could do is to, when they are called in, of course they don't step in, they have to be invited into an investigation. Mm-hmm. When they are called in, to do a very thorough investigation, meaning to test, to oversample, just for the purpose of gathering more data, more information, because there's so few opportunities to really study the bacteria in the environment rather than in a lab, and they behave very differently in the lab setting versus what they call wild strains. So that would be another thing.
Is it fair to say that most state or local health departments could handle an outbreak?
I'm not going to say most. Okay. I think it's always a good idea to have that that additional expertise and guidance. This is something that the CDC does, and they're very good at it. So I think it varies really with the health department. Some are larger and have broader experience. The health department covers such a wide range of
everything.
Wide range of events, so they cannot be experts on every single thing.
Okay, well that's nice. I'm glad you cleared that up for me. Now I want to go ahead and give you a little chance to discuss the organization you're affiliated with, the Alliance to Prevent Legionnaires Disease. You have the floor.
Okay, great. Well, the Alliance is a group of researchers, public health groups, and scientists focused on Legionella sources and prevention best practices. We're trying to, or one of our goals is to educate on the disease. As you said, a lot of people in the general public link cooling tower, Legionnaires comes from cooling towers, and that's the thought. But if you dig into the data and talk to the people, who are very knowledgeable on the subject, you see really 2%. What about the other 98? So that's some of the education we're trying to get through. Also, the group, we have a great website, PreventLegionnaires.org, and there's a whole host of information on how the disease is transmitted, different prevention activities that can be taken by, whether you manage a facility or whether you're just, you're just curious for your own home, what can you do, those type of things. And a lot of good background information on the disease.
Excellent. And you have social media too, I suppose?
We do, yeah, responding to different current events, and everyone has to be able to tweet things nowadays, right? Yeah,
absolutely. I will take the website, and you got a Twitter handle?
Oh my goodness, I should know that. But I don't.
I put you on the spot. I'll find it, and I'll publish it when I publish the podcast to the show.
Thank you.
Sure.
Do you mind if I briefly list some of the main items that we're calling for?
Oh, please. You got the floor, ma'am.
Okay, well, the Alliance is calling for increased research on Legionella and disease prevention, improve water quality with greater investment in infrastructure, maintaining a constant water quality from the treatment plant all the way to building entrances, and investigation of cases and outbreaks in accordance with CDC investigation tools.
Excellent. And Sarah, is there anything that I didn't ask that I left out that you think is important to bring up?
So one thing that I would just like your listeners to be aware of is that since the August 6th, 2015 enactment of the New York City regulations on cooling towers, so that was after the large outbreak last year, there have been more than 400 cases of Legionnaires' disease in New York City that have been reported to the CDC. So that's an additional 400 cases in just over a year after the regulations were put into place. So I would strongly encourage the different jurisdictions that are looking at that, at those regulations, to really take a deeper dive into what some of the primary causes of this disease are. Very
good. And the website is preventlegionnaires.org.
You got it.
And the Twitter is @PreventLD. @PreventLD, if you want to check out their Twitter page and their website. And I want to thank Sarah Ferrari and Dr. Mark Edwards for your time and expertise. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.